Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, I've already previewed the East semifinal in the 2025 CFL playoffs, where I quickly broke down looking at the game that features the Montreal Alouettes hosting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You can see that video right there. Well, now we shift our focus to the west side of the bracket. In the West semifinal, we're on the road to the 112th Grey Cup. That will eventually go to the Winnipeg in a couple weeks' time on Sunday, November the 16th at Princess Auto Stadium. But up here in the 1st of November, Saturday, November 1st, 2025, this seems to be a very, very familiar setting, as the BC Lions, they are hosting the Calgary Stampeders at the West semifinal at BC Place. Well, this is actually the third time in 4 years the BC Lions and Calgary Stampeders are meeting for the West semifinal in BC. So, as I'll break down this here, I got the West Division colors on, and this game will actually be playing an hour later than usual, as they shifted the kickoff times, because another big thing that's happening today on Saturday, November the 1st, there's a little baseball game, World Series they call it, and it's needing all 7 games that featured the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Unfortunately, the Toronto Blue Jays weren't able to bring it home last night, but let's bring it home tonight, Toronto Blue Jays. So there'll be some focus on that as well, but bring up my notes and break down the West Side file. But before I do that, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below, and I should also say I am also a Calgary Stampeders fan, so it's going to be interesting to see, will my bias factor in my prediction, or am I going to look at this objectively with this matchup with the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders? Excuse me. So, kickoffs I mentioned, Saturday, November 1st. This will be 3:30 Mountain Time, so it's an hour later than usual, where it be 5:30 Eastern Time or 2:30 Pacific, as the game is in Vancouver at BC Place. Excuse me. So if we look at the matchup in this one, both teams actually had similar records, but the season series dictated why the game's in BC and not in Calgary. But BC Lions, they were 11-7, second in the West Division. They were 6-3 at home, and they were 6-4 versus the West Division. While the Calgary Stampeders, they were third in the West Division, also with a 11-7 record. They were 5-4 on the road. However, they were better against the West Division with a 7-3 record, shall I say. But we'll see where 2 of those 3 losses came from. And next thing we'll look at is the season series. And these 2 teams played each other fairly recently, late in the season, twice within 3 weeks. And I'm going to say it wasn't pretty for my Calgary Stampeders. If you go back to week 16, this is when Calgary was in their funk after they lost 4 straight after Labor Day, including this season series. Well, week 16 on Friday, September the 19th, 2025, the BC Lions destroyed the Calgary Stampeders 52-23. This was in Calgary. And then 2 weeks later, after I took my lumps in Montreal, when I went to Montreal, week 18 on Saturday, October the 4th, the game was in BC, and the Calgary Stampeders lost that one, as the BC Lions won 38-24. So BC took both games in the season series and got the tiebreak with the right to host this game instead of it being here in Calgary. And also it didn't help that the Stampeders were down 31-9 late in the third quarter. So that is the season series part of this video. As mentioned, the winner of this game will get to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. This game will be next Saturday, November 8th at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time at Mosaic Stadium. So, going to go from the comfort of the dome to being in a very hostile environment out in Regina before going to Winnipeg, as that's how the West Road to the Grey Cup will go. So, when it comes to last playoff win, well, BC actually had their last playoff win a couple years ago at the expense of my Calgary Stampeders in 2023, as BC last won this game when they last hosted the West semifinal against the Calgary Stampeders, as BC won that game 41-30. And if you're a Calgary Stampeders fan like me and following the Calgary Stampeders, you're thinking, gee, it feels like it's been a while since Calgary last won a playoff game. That's because it's been a while since the Calgary Stampeders last won a playoff game. The last time the Calgary Stampeders won a playoff game was back in 2018. And this was the 107th or 106th Grey Cup. That was in Edmonton. And when I was celebrating extra hard because the Calgary Stampeders won the Grey Cup in Edmonton 27-16. So Calgary is looking for their first playoff win in 7 years. So 2018 was the last time Calgary won a playoff game. So now when it comes to playoff history, as I mentioned, this season is the third time in 4 years that Calgary and BC are playing each other in the West semifinal in BC. Well, last time these two teams met was in 2023, West semifinal. The BC Lions won 41-30. That game was in BC. And then the year before, in 2022, the West semifinal, the BC Lions also won that game against the Calgary Stampeders 30-16. And then the time before that, the last time Calgary won against the BC Lions in the playoffs was in 2016, as the Calgary Stampeders defeated the BC Lions 42-15. And then both 2022 and 2023, eventually the BC Lions lost to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup, and both of those years, unfortunately, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers lost the Grey Cup. And then in 2016, when Calgary won the West Final, they got to go to the Grey Cup, but they unfortunately lost to the Ottawa Red Blacks in overtime that year. Why they couldn't give the ball to Jerome Messam is beyond me that season. So looking at playoff history set up, now let's take a look at who's got the edge in this one. And I'm going to say there's a couple of interesting storylines to follow in this game. Well, the offense definitely would favor the BC Lions. Nathan Rourke, our quarterback, has had Calgary's number when he has played in the CFL. And then they have Justin McInnes, leading receiver for the BC Lions. I'm going to say BC has got a better receiving core than the Calgary Stampeders. Right now, they have more established veterans. However, when it comes to the running game, you can give the slight edge to the Calgary Stampeders, as Dedrick Mills led the CFL in rushing this season. And then you also got James Butler, and then there was another running back, I forgot his name, that came onto the scene to the BC Lions. But Dedrick Mills at least gives Calgary a little bit of an edge when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, and same with the offensive line, and be able to protect the quarterback. This also will be a storyline that the BC Lions decide to stay with Nathan Rourke, the Canadian quarterback that they drafted a couple years ago after he tried his luck in the NFL. That made Vernon Adams Jr. expendable, so Vernon Adams Jr. got traded here to Calgary, so that's one storyline to watch, as Vernon Adams Jr. is now with the Calgary Stampeders instead of the BC Lions. Now on the defensive side of the ball, when it comes to the line and the linebackers, you might give that slight edge to the BC Lions. You know, they got Matthew Betts, Mike Ollie, the sack leader, and the sack leader. But the defensive backs, especially with Adrian Green, so he's going to be in this one. Another former Calgary Stampeder, or BC Lion, now with the Calgary Stampeders, to keep an eye on, the interceptions leader, because Nathan Rourke, sometimes with his big plays, can throw up a few interceptions. So that could play also a story in this game. But Calgary has had a revamped defense overall. They also actually going to have veterans Adam Bighill and Lorenzo Molden IV in this one too. So maybe they got some veteran help that could maybe tip the scales a little more even for the matchup in this one. Then when it comes to special teams, I'll get the slight edge to the BC Lions and Sean White over Rene Paredes. Both reliable veteran kickers, but Sean White has had a better season at making field goals. In the return game, there really isn't really established running return game for either side, so it's a push for that one. So someone could step up in this one. Don't even know. Not sure if Kalen Horton is going to be used or Eric Brooks for the Calgary Stampeders, but the return game I think is going to be a push, and I don't think it's going to be much of a factor for either side in this one, shall say. So now if we get to the this team will win if, BC, I'm going to say, will simply win if Nathan Rourke continues his passing attack and continue to have his number with the Calgary Stampeders. I'm going to say Calgary will win if, let's say, if one of our receivers has a big day. Could it be it's Evan Jones, Dominic Grimes, maybe Eric Brooks, or maybe Damian Alford? I'm going to have to see an unsung hero have a big day on offense, or maybe Adrian Green, let's say, has a pick six and a couple interceptions. That's where I say Calgary could win if this one goes the Stampeders' way. For formality purposes, I do give the weather forecast, even though it's going to be inside the dome at BC Place, but apparently it's mainly cloudy with showers and high of 10 in Vancouver, so you'll need to try to stay dry going to the game. And then it'll be rainy, cloudy, low of 7 after the game. So temperate, rainy season type weather in Vancouver, but it's in the dome. So weather will not be a factor in this game, and this will be the only game that will be inside in the CFL playoffs. So now let's get to prediction. Who do I think is going to advance in the CFL playoffs in 2025 to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week? If I think it's going to be the BC Lions, well, here's the BC Lions colors. Or if I pick the Calgary Stampeders, these would be the Stampeders colors. BC Lions or the Calgary Stampeders. Who do I think will advance to be able to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week? Let's see, BC or Calgary. Who do I have advancing to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week? Well, the show that I completely keep an open mind and keep things honest, and not to show that I'm fully biased. I have a feeling the BC Lions will advance, beat the Calgary Stampeders, and take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week. My score prediction is 31-21 for the BC Lions. I do have a 60% confidence in this one because it's a one-game showdown. I do think it will be a mild upset if the Calgary Stampeders do advance to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week. But I'm just looking at the season series, and it was fairly recent how the matchup history. Things are trending right now towards the BC Lions, and the BC Lions have looked stronger down the stretch. Where Calgary, we had a strong start leading up to Labor Day, and then we had that 4 straight losses, including those 2 against the BC Lions. And Calgary did pick it up down the stretch to hopefully try to maybe host the playoff game. But I have more confidence right now in the BC Lions in terms of looking like they're peaking at the right time and will be advancing to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders next week. So who do you think is going to win the West Side Final between the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders? And then, of course, next week this time I'll preview and break down the East and West Finals and give my predictions then, who I think will ultimately be going to Winnipeg for the 112th Grey Cup. And of course, I'm also going to say, as a Calgary Stampeders fan, we still have a fairly younger team. I want Calgary to win the Grey Cup more next year. The 113th Grey Cup, and you probably figure out why. We're hosting it. Excuse me. That's what I meant to say. So anyway, so I want to close out and say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and have my other social media links down in the description below. Enjoy the CFL playoffs for another season. And Toronto Blue Jays, let's bring home the World Series tonight. Game 7 with the game in Toronto. So I just want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.